Why Silo 1? The episode gives us a surface-level answer. Daniel is taken there because that is where the people he knows are gathered. Victor Krinkovich tells him that Senator Thurman wants to see him, and Daniel is escorted toward the central group connected to the Silo Project. By this point, we know that the Silo Project has a hierarchy. Silo 1 sits at the center of that system. The other silos are being prepared to hold ordinary populations, while the people behind the project have information and authority that those future residents will never have. And earlier in the season, Daniel and Helen had been offered a chance to join the project. They walked away. They had learned enough about what Stenson and Thurman were doing to understand that this was something much bigger than a normal underground shelter program. Episode 8 made the stakes even clearer. Daniel and Helen learned that the project was designed around an existential threat involving nanotechnology. Daniel's sister Charlotte had already been affected by that threat, which gave Daniel a personal reason to understand just how serious the situation had become. So when Daniel suddenly gets invited to the completed silos after rejecting the project, there is already something strange about the invitation. Think about what the show has been doing with Silo 1 in the present-day timeline. Bernard spent much of his life believing that Silo 18 had some level of control over its own fate. By Season 3, we understand that the situation is much darker. There is a higher authority connected to the Silo network, and the safeguard can be activated against an entire population. The Helen. And how does the story eventually connect these two people to the population that will inhabit the silos for centuries? There is one especially strange detail here. Daniel and Helen had already decided that they didn't want to become part of Stenson's project. They were trying to build a life outside it. Then the world ends. So that makes Daniel's journey into Silo 1 feel less like a promotion and more like an accident created by the people who designed the project. The people in charge had already built a system where individual choices would eventually become irrelevant. Maybe the Silo project was simply designed around the people already inside its inner circle, and Daniel was swept into that structure because of his relationship with them. That distinction matters. The show has repeatedly presented Stenson's project as something that was already moving beyond the control of the people who created it. Victor tells Helen that AI wrote the book and the humans edited it. That means the people building the silos were already creating a system that could eventually govern human behavior on its own. Daniel walks into that system at the worst possible moment. He arrives expecting to see Charlotte and the people behind the project. Because Daniel has a unique position in this story. He understands the before times. He understands politics. He understands the people who created the silos. And he has a personal connection to Charlotte, whose story may be tied directly to the technology that caused the catastrophe. If Daniel survives, he could become a bridge between the people who built the silos and the people who eventually live inside them. And the silo that will eventually become central to Juliet's story. Daniel is sent towards Silo 1, the place that appears increasingly connected to the authority controlling the network. So the couple is split across the two most important locations in the entire series. One goes toward the future population, the other goes toward the people controlling that population. And we still don't know whether that separation was purely accidental. If Daniel survives, Silo 1 could explain what happened to the original leadership after the catastrophe. That's the immediate reason. The deeper reason may be structural. Daniel was already connected to the people at the center of the project, so when the catastrophe arrived, he naturally ended up closest to the people who would control what came next. And that could have enormous consequences, because Daniel knows the truth about the outside world. Future generations won't. Daniel knows the silos were built because of a technological threat. Future generations will grow up believing the outside world is deadly. Daniel knows there was a normal world before the silos. Future generations will have almost no memory of it. And Daniel knows the people behind the project. That last part could be the most dangerous knowledge of all. Imagine surviving the apocalypse while knowing that the people now controlling your entire civilization were once ordinary politicians, scientists, engineers, and wealthy investors. That knowledge would make it very difficult for Daniel to accept the system quietly. If he gets a chance to resist, he probably will. But there is an even darker possibility. Daniel could eventually become part of the system. If Silo 1 becomes the center of authority, Daniel's political background could make him useful. He understands institutions. He knows how governments operate. He knows how people respond to fear. Those are exactly the skills a new underground society would need. Whether Daniel becomes an opponent of the system or one of the people helping establish it could completely change how we understand his role. And Season 3 has deliberately kept that answer out of reach. We know where Daniel was sent. We know why he was physically moved there. We know Silo 1 was connected to the inner circle of the project. We know the catastrophe separated him from Helen. We know Charlotte was mysteriously absent. The missing piece is what happened to Daniel after he entered Silo 1. That is the question I would be watching most closely, because if Daniel survives, his story could explain the transition between the world we have been watching in the before times and the world Juliet has spent her life trying to understand. And suddenly, his destination makes a lot more sense. Daniel was sent to Silo 1 because that was where the people behind the project were gathering. But the writers may have placed him there for a much bigger reason. Silo 1 is where the secrets of the system begin. Silo 18 is where those secrets will eventually be forgotten. And Daniel has been positioned on the first side of that divide. Now the real mystery is whether he survives long enough to carry those secrets into the world that comes after the blast.